I'm sorry, I just noticed my mic wasn't on. So I was saying, hey, 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 welcome everyone back to the channel. If you have been here before, that is amazing, and I appreciate you coming back to check us out and see what we're about. If you've never been here before, welcome, welcome to Shoot the Shh. And it's one of those things where I've been thinking, really heavily about men, thinking about dads particularly, and how they influence the next generation of particularly young men. Um, However, I am a woman's advocate channel, of course, and woman empowerment. So I can't remiss how dads influence women, how they help raise their young ladies to become women. And so a lot of times we miss some things in between. Let's talk about that safety. What does that really mean? I found out that, some dads really actually are absent, not necessarily by choice. Sometimes it's circumstance. Well, ultimately, women that might be angry about that might say it still was a choice, right? But in a man's mind, it might be more circumstance than a choice. And so, therefore, I'm here to talk about redemption for dads. What does that really look like? Protecting your family as a dad who has a record, maybe. Let's explore some of those options and those things that we need to talk about as a community. Because again, we're here together to help one another. I learn from you just like you learned from me. And it looks like our guest is joining here now. Hey, hey, hey. Welcome, welcome.
Hey, what's going on?
How are you?
I am in the world. I'm doing good. And you?
I'm doing good. I'm doing good. You busy as ever?
I'm yeah. My youngest son wanted to go to a fair, and I'm out in the suburbs of Connecticut waiting for him to finish doing whatever teenagers do at a fair.
I hear you. I hear you. Well, thanks for spending some time with us today. As we are here to just talk about some things that the community really needs to explore. It's a woman empowerment channel, of course, but this month is all about dads. And I wanted to give that space where dads can actually talk about some of the things that me, even a lady, may not understand. I'm a mom of four, and I can tell you that job is tough, but I can't fill the shoes of a dad. You guys have a different role. So, and you're already experiencing that right now.
No, for real, I hear that. One of the things about it, 8 p.m. is um, it's like fatherhood time, and I appreciate you being flexible. Yesterday, my oldest actually works, and I had to pick him up at 4, and I had a couple things going on at work that I couldn't avoid. And then at this point, when you got teenagers, they often tell you about things 5 minutes before they happen. And I'm a
Yeah.
single father, and I think it's important for me to consistently find ways to be there for my kid, even if it in some ways impinges on like my own plan.
Mm-hmm.
Because as long as you can hear me clearly, then I think this is part of the work of what it is to be a father, which is to show up for the community and to show up for my child um, simultaneously.
Agreed. Agreed. Definitely. And I'm definitely right there with you about kids telling us stuff at the last minute. I got some teenagers too, and it happens. It
Yeah, for
definitely
real.
happens. So, well, welcome to Shoot This. The last time you and I actually met, we had a really interesting encounter because, just in case anybody may not know, I'm Mrs. Trouble and I am a licensed firearm instructor. I have a company named Trouble Defense that I run with my husband and I. And Mr. Dwayne reached out because he was looking to go to the range. But we're going to put a pin in that for right now because we want to rewind back a little bit more to the beginning of your path and why we're here today. The fact that you have gone through what you've gone through. So we'll give them a nice little snippet of the fact that at 16, you were charged as an adult, incarcerated. If I had the number right, was it 9 years?
I got sentenced to 9 years. I served probably 8 years, 3 months.
Okay. All right. Well, 8 years and 3 months. That's 9 years to me, though. I'm just going to tell you that's
You know,
9 years to me.
yeah.
um, so what I will say though, is you've overcome that. Then you came out of prison and you decided to go down a certain path of regaining your rights and fighting for others in the legal system. So you became a student at Yale. Why Yale?
Well, I should say I was convicted. I pled guilty to carjacking. I carjacked a man with a gun, and I attempted to rob two women. And I think one of the challenges always is having done something that I find shameful and that is, egregiously violent. It's easy to start a story and sort of skip over that and think that I went to prison as a juvenile, which I still think was unjust.
Mhm.
Just because of how violent prison was, and I was 16 years old, and I was 5'5" and 120 pounds. But the reality is, I think the state was in the same position that my family, my community was in, which is how do you weigh the violence I inflicted on people with the violence that I inflicted on my community, with the challenges and the consequences that I would face if sent to prison with adults. And I think that that was a really difficult balancing act. And I'm not in the mind of the judges, but I think all things considered, my minimum sentence was 23 years. My maximum sentence was life. I got the minimum sentence, and a judge suspended some of that minimum sentence. So I ultimately had 9 years. And I just want to be clear
Wow.
about that. And then, when we talk about my journey, I mean, it's all happenstance. I came out, and all I knew was that I wanted to go to college. And I started out trying to go to University of Maryland. And this is less than a month when I'm out of prison. And it's March. I don't even know what the word semester means. So I have no idea that I'm in the middle of the second semester and that you're not going to be able to start school at a university at the middle of the second semester. I
Yeah.
had a sort of one of the counselors at the University of Maryland that was really kind to me, hit me to community college. It's like, yo, you should go to community college. If you're as smart as you say you are, you'll do well there, and then you'll be able to earn scholarships. And so I went to community college, got a full tuition scholarship there. From community college, I went to the University of Maryland, and I also went to Warren Wilson College where I got an MFA in poetry. I had every intention of being a poetry professor, um, but for reasons that I can't really name, I wasn't able to get a job interview, let alone a job. And I was on a fellowship at Harvard at the Radcliffe Institute for Advanced Studies. And, black women in a lot of ways have saved my life. And again, and black women have fundamentally been my inspiration for what I might do in the world. I was in the law school's cafeteria, and I was writing because if you learn to write in prison, if you learn to think in prison, if you learn to study in prison, you learn to do all of those things amidst chaos and noise. And so me
Hmm.
and one of my homies, we would always go to the law school's cafeteria to write. And a woman was calling my friend's name, and he was ignoring her. And then when he realized that she was talking to him, he was like, wait a
The phone click broke up a little bit for you
realized I
right there.
wasn't finished. She said, I realized I wasn't finished with school. And so I should either get a PhD in English or go to law school. And I decided to go to law school. And I swear she shrugged. She was like, so I decided to go to law school. And I was like, what? So we just making decisions like that if we end up at Harvard? I'm going to law school too.
Yeah.
And I had done a paralegal course while I was in prison, which is another interesting story. I just did it on a whim. And look like I'm,
Wi-Fi is acting crazy where you at right now.
yeah, let me go to somewhere that's more amenable to our
Okay.
conversation.
Well, in the meaning, I'm in a moment. I'm just gonna go ahead and just address some of these things in the comments here while you getting that together here. First of all, triple is it a baller Z? Hey, hey, hey! Welcome, welcome. Thank you so much for joining here. And not sure if he was in the weight room, but I can tell you guys he's a biker, so that's why he's able to kind of keep walking and talking. I was thinking about that. I was like, wow, he's actually keeping good breath while he's walking and talking and holding the phone. So I've actually kind of seen that in action myself before and was kind of I'm even more impressed with the ability that you have to walk and talk like this and hold a whole conversation like this. I know the fact that you're a biker actually, I'm sure, helps with that win that you got right now.
Yo, I biked 20 miles this morning. But I was
Oh
gonna
my
say,
goodness.
when she said that she had went to law school essentially on a whim, I
Hmm.
remembered that I had took a paralegal course while I was in prison, that I had wrote a habeas corpus petition for a guy while I was in prison, that I got him 5 years off of his sentence. that I got 90 days off of my own sentence when I wrote a habeas corpus petition for myself. And I thought
Mhm.
I should go to law school. And I applied, and wildly I got into a lot of schools: Georgetown, University of Pennsylvania, Harvard, um, Michigan. Had a lot of full scholarship offers, and I ended up going to Yale Law School primarily because I shouldn't even say this, yo. I should not say this, but I'm from PG County, yo, and it's a lot of traffic. And I went to Yale because New Haven is a black city, and there is not a lot of traffic. And I should say this during this month. The primary concern I had was being able to go to an institution that would allow me to be a father, that would allow me to get to class and get home. It's not a lot of traffic in New Haven. It was small classes. There were no grades, and it was like a high level of excellence, but the standard was based on what you did in the classroom and not some artificial assessment of your work. And I knew that I could go there and I could excel, and more importantly, I could be the kind of father I wanted to be. And so I ended up going to Yale Law School.
Nice, nice. I'm glad that they had those type of options available for you to be able to maintain getting your education and also still maintaining being a dad, a present dad, I should say. And I know that was a bit of a juggle too. Plenty of parents out there who's going to school and being a parent. For me, I terribly failed at that. I started out going to nursing school and I had my first daughter, and I was just like, man, I had never failed a class a day in my life until after I had given birth. And I was just like, maybe I just need to take me a sabbatical. Well, needless to
Hey,
say,
yo,
that
that's really
sabbatical
brave.
took, I'm
That
sorry.
is really brave of you saying that, though. I realize that we live in a society and we live in communities where, we don't discuss our struggles and we don't discuss the ways in which, we wanted to be a thing and that thing ended
Mhm.
up not being for us. And I feel that a lot of things, and, I went to law school because I couldn't get a job. I mean, I didn't go to law school because I had a desire to be a lawyer. I discovered that desire once I had failed at so many other things, once I was really incapable of getting a job that makes living wage. And then I founded Freedom Reads. The FR on my shirt stands for Freedom Reads. But I founded this organization that builds libraries in prison, predicated on the fact that, post law school, I still couldn't get a kind of job that I wanted. And I was still struggling to make a living. And so I decided maybe I should build my own thing. And
Yeah.
and and now we got 20 staff members, and they all make decent money, and a number of them have been in prison. And so I feel much better about my course. But my course happened because the opportunities, even with a Yale law degree that my classmates had, were not available to me.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, I'm definitely going to go to some of these comments here so people can get their
Free
questions
degrees. Somebody
answered.
said, "Are they giving free degrees in jail?" Shit, I wish. A lot of people ask me if I went to. They do give you a free degree in jail, and it's called a library if you're lucky. And I read
Mm,
thousands and thousands of books while I was in prison. And so when I came home, I got straight A's in college. And when I came home, I consistently proved myself to be an excellent student. And I like to believe that, I wanted to represent for anybody who has a state number. And anybody who knows me will say, if I show up in a room and I show up in a classroom, I am absolutely going to do my thing. It's going to be very few people who work harder than me, if any at all. And it's going to be very few people who come in as prepared as I do. And often because of the books that I read before going to college, I was prepared even before I got the syllabus.
mm. I hear you. Well, hey, Michael. Welcome, welcome. He had a question about how did going to jail for 9 years affect your mental and what kept you motivated? Uh-oh. Looks like Wi-Fi cutting out on us again. I guess it'll regenerate in a second.
How come I can still see you? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now. You
All right, I'm gonna
froze for
stop
a
moving.
second.
I'm gonna stop moving because I think I'm walking into a bad spot every once in a while. But like, I left my mother weeping. My mom didn't even. You go into court and they allow you to present character witnesses, and people stood up and they spoke on my behalf, but they didn't know what to say. And they all blamed it on the fact that I didn't have a father. Talk about
Mm,
fathers and Father's Day. And
right.
the thing I did, maybe one of the things I'm most proud of in this life is I stood up when they said, "Mr. Betts, do you have anything to say for yourself?" And I said, I can't tell you why I committed the crime I committed, but I can tell you I didn't do it because I didn't have a father. And just like that, y'all had one excuse. And I was like, nope, I don't have that excuse. And they sentenced me to 9 years. But
Wow.
um, but when I was inside, I was bent on proving to my mom that her faith in me wasn't wasted. I was bent
Mm.
on proving to myself. When I was a kid, it's easy when you could
The Wi-Fi messing up again.
and
Say that again. It messed up.
I had said I was going to do a lot of things in this world that I never did,
Hmm.
and I just wanted to prove myself good on those promises. I wanted to prove to myself that I could be the person I said I could be for my mom. And so, in terms of keeping my mental stable, that was part of it. But the other part of it was I was young.
Mm.
I was so young that I wasn't hip to how challenging the world was going to be for me.
Right. Wow. I mean, that's powerful though. For you to be able to take a struggle like that, have something. I have, I have, I have moms and dads, right? Okay, and I had to explain this the last session, so I'm gonna say this again, just in case y'all wasn't here to see. I do have two sets of moms and dads, okay, but it's not like the 2025 way of two moms and two dads. Okay, got to be clear about that. And Dwayne, just so you know, I can't see you. Your screen is black. I can still hear you, but I can't see you. Um, well, just in case y'all wasn't here last week, I do have two sets of parents. So I was blessed, overly blessed in that way, but not in the 2020 Pride Month type of way. Okay. I have a mom and I have a stepdad, I have a dad and I have a stepmom. So therefore I was raised with actually four parents, in a sense. And with that being said, you speaking about letting your parents down, letting your mom down and then letting yourself down, and how you redeemed yourself because that is what motivated you. And that is definitely something I see in my own kids where, if my daughters do something that disappoints me, to be honest with you, they're more disappointed with disappointing their dad than they are with me. It's like, oh yeah, sorry, mom. But dad, it's like, I worry about their mental when they disappoint their dad. Because it's that
Yeah,
deep. It's
yeah, no,
that
that's
deep for them.
that's what I mean. I feel like I come from a generation where fathers were pretty absent, and I try to be careful about
Hmm.
judging from my own experiences and anecdotal evidence. But I came up in the '90s. I mean, I probably knew a couple dudes who dad lived in the house. None of them
Hmm.
lived in my neighborhood, and so I mean, I think that's powerful. I like to believe I'm trying to create a legacy for my own sons, in which they see their father on a regular basis, in which their dad shows up for them. I mean, I had a couple times. Maybe some of the livest things I did this year was spending like 4 nights straight working with my 13-year-old on building a catapult, this particular kind of Roman catapult, out of poplar. And it took forever for us to figure out how to do this. And it was the first time I ever used a saw, and we failed a bunch of times, and that's why we was up all night, 3 nights in a row. But I like to believe I'm trying to set a this notion of what it means to show up.
Hmm.
I'm trying to actualize the idea because in my head I grew up with an idea about what a father was. I'm trying to make sure that my sons don't grow up with an idea. But the reality is they disappointed that they when they disappoint you too, they just might not let you know it. You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, I'm curious though, thanks so much, first of all, DMV Renovations, for jumping on. I see you here, sir. Hey, hey, hey. And it definitely is always, situations that we all have to go through. I'm wondering, how did you being incarcerated really affect your ability and your thoughts and your feeling about fatherhood? Do you feel like it weighed on you or it taught you something or was more of a negative effect?
That's actually an interesting question. I was gonna say I wasn't thinking about it that much because I was a teenager, but the truth is the first poem I got published was called A Different Route. And it was literally about it was in the first person poem. Everybody should get my new book of poetry called Doggerel. It's really dope. But
Definitely.
it was a first person poem and it was about a father who was going back to his old neighborhood to rediscover what his wife and his kids said had turned to stone in his eyes.
Mm.
And so, and it's wild that I got that dream published when I wasn't a father at all, didn't have a girlfriend, let alone children. Um, and so I guess it affected me because I was thinking, and I wrote this in my memoir, A Question of Freedom, that came out in like 2009, about how I met my fathers in prison. And it was both, and it wasn't like my actual pops, but
Mhm.
it was the men who were of his generation, and it
Yeah.
was men who were like slightly younger than him. And what did it mean for me to meet my grandfathers and my fathers in prison? So I thought about it a lot. Um, I don't know how it influenced me though. I mean, I think my character got shaped in a lot of ways by dudes who was like stand up individuals, and
Mm.
and sometimes my character got shaped by dudes who was clowns, by dudes who like wasn't worthy of respect, because they set a model too. And actually, I learned, sometimes you got the most game from somebody who is the most dangerous person in the room.
Mhm.
Because sometimes, you would get a word from somebody and be like, wow, okay, I need to move slightly differently because I don't want to be like you. I don't want to be in
Exactly.
community with you. And so in that way, I think I learned a lot about what it meant to be a father because I learned a lot about what it meant to show up for people.
Mm. Yeah, that's extremely important. That definitely is one of the things that gravitates to me too, to be present in my kid's life. Um, I've been motivated to ultimately be an entrepreneur as a result of that, among other things. But it really stood out to me. One thing that stuck in my head is I remember growing up, my mom, when she wasn't with my biological dad, she was single for a while, and then later with my stepdad. Basically, they kind of had an off and on relationship for a while. So there was times where my stepdad was away at college and he didn't live with us at the time. They weren't together, or they were together but a long distance relationship. So nonetheless, my mother was raising me as a single parent at this time many times. And what that meant for me is coming up in DC. I don't know if you guys who are watching can relate to this, but we had to walk to school. There wasn't no school buses coming to get us unless we was on a special bus. Okay, so if you had special needs, you got a bus. But if you ain't had special needs, you walking or you catching metro. So I remember coming home from school and my mom wasn't yet home, but we had a system. I had an auntie that was next door and a family of the house family of sorry family friend that was like an auntie as well that was always home. And so I would check in with them when I'm home until my mom got home about maybe 30 minutes to an hour later. Okay. And I remember that sticking in my head because it was so important to me when I started having kids for me to be present when they came home from school. If not me, my husband. So it was always a big deal for us to be the one welcome them in the house and say, "Hey, how's your day?" And it's a big deal to have family meals. Like we eat dinner almost every night together. I mean, occasionally some weekends or everything like that, then maybe we won't. But for the most part, we're sitting at the table eating dinners together.
Yeah,
Honestly.
I'm a nigga though. I'm sorry, yo. And, it's wild too because like I had all these beliefs that I was gonna do these things, man, and it's
Uh-huh.
like I grew up as an only child, man. I was latchkey kid, and I
Mm-hmm.
saw somebody that was locked up in California. I want to say this. So CDCR, that's the California Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation. So my
Mm-hmm.
organization builds freedom libraries, and we put them on prison cell blocks. If it's 15 cell blocks in the prison, we put 15 libraries there. And so we put
Yeah.
libraries on every cell block in Soledad, on every cell block in Valley State, on every cell block in the women's prison across from Valley State, and on every cell block in Chino. And so we've been doing this work, and we've been on every cell block in several prisons in Virginia, Massachusetts, Louisiana. But it's interesting because I had this idea for me. My family meals were in a joint when it's five of us together and we making a meal, we making a swole together. And it's
Mm-hmm.
almost like I don't even know if y'all remember that joint, but it was like rock soup or stone soup where everybody just grabbing whatever they can. It was a children's book, and everybody grabbed whatever they can, and the mother hen made the soup, right? That's how we was living in a joint, man. It's like, everybody would grab, somebody would have the chips, somebody would have a cracker, somebody would have a tuna fish, somebody would get a bell pepper from the kitchen, and it's four of us, five of us, and they're breaking bread together, right? And so it's interesting because in my head, I had a conception and I just got divorced, right? Which is neither here nor there. But to say that when you try to figure out how you make your family and how you make your community, I have actually discovered that it has become important for me to figure out ways in which we could do it that might not map on to what I saw in the Cosby Show, that might not
Mhm.
map on to even what I desired. But we do it. So we might cook together. Me and my youngest son make a mean steak. We might cook together, and
Mhm.
then we might watch a game together, and then eat half of the meal and then break off. Or we might cook
Mhm.
together. I mean, I cooked before I left. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
My oldest is still there, but I made pasta with some Italian meatballs and some RAO, that raw pasta sauce, and it was
Yeah, that
banging.
sounds
But
good.
like, but we didn't eat together though. But
Uh-huh.
I made sure that my oldest had a meal
Mhm.
before we broke out. I made sure that my youngest had an opportunity to hang with his friends. And
Yeah.
then, Father's Day weekend, all I want for Father's Day is for us to cook together. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so it's really interesting to think about how do you create community. I told my kids once, they said, "What do you want for Father's?" I said, "Yo, let's go for a walk."
Mhm.
Because basically it's like you build the opportunity to have those moments in a way that suits your schedule, in a way that suits your lifestyle. And we ain't even got no table. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? To be straight up, I mean, I live in an apartment. We
Yeah.
ain't got one of those dining room tables. So when we eat together, we eating on the couch. And so but it's cool though. And honestly, I love it when I could talk to other folks who do that thing that I wish that I had did
Mhm.
more of. But
Well,
it's all
just
right.
start little. Try doing it like, y'all got a favorite TV show, like you said, the game or something. Y'all could just like make the
Nah, I
food and
don't
sit
like
there and
talking
eat
to him that
together.
much. I don't
Oh,
like
okay.
talking. Nah,
I
I'm
just
joking. I'm joking, right? I'm joking. But the thing is, like, what I found is, like, it's interesting because it just becomes this question of,
mhm.
like, for me and them, like, how do we build community, and how do we build community? And we eat out way too much, but that's all
Mhm.
right though. You know what I mean?
That
I
still
didn't
keep
look,
it
dude. I thought that they invented restaurants when I was in the penitentiary. You know what I mean?
together.
I ain't know no restaurants when I was growing up. And so
Yeah.
now a lot of times when I want that vibe of sitting around a kitchen table and dining room table, then
Mhm.
we going out to a restaurant. And then for Christmas, man, we was in a Chinese restaurant. My kid was
Mm.
like, "Yo, these spots ain't open." And it was our first Christmas where it was just me and them. And I was
Oh
like, "Yo, let's go
wow.
to the Chinese spot." He was like, "Yo, that spot is not open." Yo, what do you mean go to the Chinese restaurant? It's Christmas, Dad. You tripping? Ain't nobody working on Christmas. Man, the Chinese spot was packed. You know what I
Are
mean?
you
So
serious?
it was
Wow.
packed, yo, because everybody ate, and that was a cultural awakening for all of us, right? It was like, wait,
Mhm.
everybody ain't Christian. You got a whole
Right.
community of people that's Muslim. You got a whole community of people that's Jewish. You got a whole community of people that's non-denominational, and they don't want to be in a house on Christmas because they don't want their kids regretting the fact that they ain't getting gifts. So they
Yeah.
had the Chinese spot, and that's where we was.
It looks like we're looking. We got some neglect going on here. Viewers are wanting to know for us to get to the good stuff. Okay, so as we segue
Somebody's
into
like, he
that,
won't talk about it. I'm not, it's like I will talk about it. It's not that I won't talk about it.
hey, look,
I
y'all,
like.
we got to give some time for other people to get in here so that y'all can hear all this. Of course, we ain't gonna just throw it out there right away. That's the good stuff. You're right, but we're gonna get to it. But before we get to that, I have to tell you guys how I segue any conversation with my family. I mean, I have 4 girls. Y'all know how crazy it is out here with these young ladies being thoughts or whatever else you want to call it. I'm trying to make sure I ain't got none of them coming up in my house, okay? So we got to be well rounded to sit down and have a meal with them because they're young ladies. They're not like guys. Y'all can talk a couple of words and y'all be done. Y'all good to go. Well, young ladies need a little bit more attention. So we do take that time, my husband and I, sit there and talk to them about their day. Every day when they come in the door, they go straight to their dad and they, hey, dad, this was my day, da 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 da. We go through that. But then we get at the dinner table later and then we talking about stuff through and through. Like, how did that make you feel? Or well, what happened when that happened? Or, we're going more into it. And even if it's business to talk about, believe it or not, we sit there and talk about business ideas, pitch business ideas with our kids. Honestly, we talk about everything at our dinner table. And that's how we keep that community going within our house and, instilling our kids. But,
My kid, my kids know I got my gun raised back, and it's crazy, right? Because we talked about that. You know what I mean? Like I mean, it took me
yes.
50 minutes to drive wherever I am right now to get to this whatever festival that my kid wanted to go to. And we talked the
Mm-hmm.
whole way up here, and we're gonna talk the whole way back. It was interesting. It's like for them, my kids grow up and their understanding of guns, first of all, is around violence because they know their daddy went to prison for pulling a pistol out on somebody. And they,
Mm-hmm.
I got married, man. All my homies was all my groomsmen had felony convictions, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so my kids understand that guns is really connected to violence, and part of it is because I live in a certain kind of progressive community that the way they think about, and the way they think about guns is really predicated around violence. And I was telling them I was gonna go hunting, and I just was like, I want a very, very, very different relationship to guns, but also, you good with me going here now?
Oh yeah, you good. Yeah, I'm good. I mean, honestly, people are a little disrespectful out here. I don't know why you talking like that. You say no disrespect, but I'm kind of taking it a little bit disrespect because we got a whole show to talk about, not just one topic. We have many topics to talk about. So, but thank you for viewing anyway, Lynn. I appreciate it. But
Yeah,
go
I
ahead.
mean, I think, I look. This is what I realized though, because I think what you hear in the comments, right, is that the expectation is that when you get a felony conviction, you will be ruined by that violence that landed you in prison, or by that perceived violence that landed you in prison. And that did govern my life in a lot of ways. I mean, you apply for. I had a full tuition academic scholarship to Howard University, and they took it from me because I had to check a box. Even though I
Mm-hmm.
wrote an essay about it, they still took the scholarship from me, right? And so I think that the perception that if you had that felony conviction, certain things would be barred from you forever is a real one most of the time. And what happened was, I was going through my life, and I realized that it was all of these things blocked from me. Even when I climbed one mountain, I would still have a struggle doing the thing that I wanted to do. That's just I want my gun rates back. And I started doing research, and it happens that Virginia is one of the states that allows you to get your gun rates back. Now, any state you could get your gun rates back if you get a pardon, because then you don't have a felony conviction anymore. Now, Virginia won't let you get a pardon if you were guilty. They'll only give you a pardon if you were innocent of the crime. But what they will do is first, most places let you get your civil rights back, so you can vote. You can serve on a jury. And some places they get it back to you automatically. In Maryland, you can vote after you've been off, as long as you're not on probation. In a lot of
Mm-hmm.
states, you can vote if you're not on probation. In DC now, you can vote even if you're locked up. Virginia, you got to apply to get your voting rights back. I applied to get my voting rights back. And then I realized, wait, I can get my gun rates back. And to get your gun rates back in Virginia, you got to sort of, if you know what parole is, you essentially put a parole packet together for yourself. You write an argument, on you submit a petition to the court that says this is who I am and this is why I should be given these gun rates back, my right to bear arms. And then you get letters of reference, and then you get a court date, and you go in front of a judge, and you got to go in front of the judge of the jurisdiction where you got your conviction at. So I appeared in a court in Fairfax County, appeared in front of a judge, and it was wild, yo. The judge looked at the joint and was like, "Yeah, I'm gonna grant this." And it's like, "Oh, my bad, prosecutor. Do you want to say anything?" And the prosecutor was like, "Nah, he's a super citizen. I have nothing to say, right?" And it was wild because I had stood in the same courtroom as a teenager, and they told me that I was a menace to society. But
Mm-hmm.
the truth is, a lot of it is predicated on what state you are. Now the challenge though is that I could shoot in Virginia and a couple other states, but like I can't shoot in Connecticut because Connecticut says a convicted felon can't have a firearm. I'm still a convicted felon. And so one of the things I'm doing now, I'm writing this long essay for the New York Times Magazine about the whole process of what it meant to get my gun rights back, why I wanted to do it, and ultimately what I want to do is prove to myself, to my family, to people who care about me. You get tired of running into a brick wall, and that brick wall says that you violent. And so I wanted to actually get a court to stamp me as not violent in the same way that they stamped me with the state number 251534. And now I guess I'm thinking conceptually about what does it mean to have those rights extended across the country, and not just have it live in a few states that have different laws.
Mm-hmm. Well, I really appreciate you sharing that, honestly. And I know people got plenty of questions, so I'm gonna just kind of look through here. And Lynn, I
Somebody
appreciate your apology.
and somebody mentioned federal gun laws, and I'll just say like the federal gun law says that if you get your state rights back, so basically the state sets the floor. So because I got my
Mhm.
state rights back in Virginia, that means that I got my federal gun laws back. So I would never have a federal conviction for having a gun in the state of Virginia. But if I would, and really anywhere, because now that I have it back in Virginia, then I'm not violating federal law. But
Mhm.
you can still violate state law though. I mean, it's you know it's the system that we have. So if I went to Mississippi and I had a gun, I would be violating Mississippi law. If I went to Connecticut and I had my pistol, I would be violating Connecticut law.
Wow. It's amazing how we supposed to be United States of America, you know? I'm gonna just let that play in someone's head, honestly. I mean, hey, enough cries. Thank you so much for joining. And you wanted to know, is there a way that we can share this story with someone else? How is the best way we can get your story out there to people? What are some sources people should check?
I mean, my name is Reginald Dwayne Betts. I got a website. My organization has a website, freedomreads.org. If I say Google my name, but I wrote a lot of pieces. I wrote a big piece in the New York Times saying, "Can an inmate become a lawyer?" I wanted to
Mhm,
find out. One of the more powerful pieces in my opinion, I wrote was about former Vice President Kamala Harris because it was ultimately about my mom, and it relates to this question of violence. You know, my mom got sexually assaulted at gunpoint, and it happened like 3 weeks after I got locked up, and she didn't tell me till I came home. And so as I was doing my criminal justice reform work and I was trying to get people out of prison, that was always in the back of my head, and it was my mother's story to tell and not
mhm,
mine. And then, 15 years or so after I got out, I asked if I could tell it when I was writing the Kamala Harris piece, and I wrote it. So you can find that one because a lot of times people think that somebody like me is only interested in. Somebody said, "How can you be a menace to society and get your gun rights back?" I was considered a menace to society. I'm a
mhm.
fucking pillar of my community now.
No
And I
damn
only say that
shit.
shit to, I mean, like I mean, like I've coached, man. I'm like, we talk about building with your family, with your children. I mean, with your sons.
Mhm,
I started coaching my youngest when he was 4, and I
mhm.
coached him until he was 12. People in
Nice.
my community know me as Coach Dwayne. They didn't even know that I was a writer. They
Mhm.
didn't know that I was a poet. They didn't know I was a lawyer. They knew I was a coach. They knew that I was teaching their kids how to make layups and shoot jump shots and do a jab step. And so I think that when it came time for me to go back to the state of Virginia and I had that opportunity to petition for my race back, I was a radically different person that was standing before them than the person that was standing before them when I was 16 and had used the gun in violence.
Yeah, that's amazing. I just seen on Instagram earlier, it popped up in my feed, a young man who had gotten out of prison and decided to become a lawyer, went ahead and passed the bar as well. So I'm like, whoa, that just came up. They always listening, all these sources, these phones, TVs, whatever, they all listening and they know I'm doing this. So I'm sure that's why that popped up in my feed because I never had something like that to pop up in my feed before. I seen another post the other day too, a young man who did however many years in prison and he saved up however many thousands of dollars while he was working in prison and he came out and because of his kid actually coming to him to see him in prison, the same exact prison that he actually went to go visit his dad in prison when he was little, he decided that when he came out like you, he gonna definitely do something better. He definitely gonna change that narrative and fix things. So he became a person flipping homes or flipping buildings. He started investing in buildings and reestablishing them and things like that. So I mean, this is just, your story and other guys' stories about these type of things. It's a proven fact that we can overcome things. We can restore ourselves to a place that we would actually be proud of ourselves. I mean, honestly, many of us, all of us fail at something. Like you said before, you had plenty of things you failed at. I had plenty of things I failed at. That doesn't mean that's my end of my story, you know? And so that's why this platform exists to inspire. I want to inspire everyone to be their best self. And it's never too late. It's never too late. You can go ahead and live your dreams. Honestly, I mean, Dwayne definitely the tables was turned against you, bro, and you decided that no, I'm gonna do something different.
Uh, you know, I mean, it's interesting because I mean, Wiley, man, yeah, in some ways the tables was turned against me, but in some other ways, I told somebody, I told my kid, I gave a commencement speech at the Indiana University's Mauer School of Law, and I found a 4-leaf clover. I found 4-leaf clovers a lot, right? And I found a 4-leaf clover that
Yes.
morning before I gave the speech. I was walking in the neighborhood and I found a 4-leaf clover, and I took a picture of it and sent to my kid, and he was like, "Man, Dad, you really lucky." And I was like, "Nah, dude, I ain't lucky. I just believe you found what you look for." And I know I
Hmm.
found what I look for. And I was looking for the 4-leaf clover because I like the attention that it takes. And I like the willingness that it forces me to be willing to recognize that all failure isn't disappointment. That not finding a fully flow isn't a failure. It isn't a disappointment. It's just a part of the process. It's a part of the journey. And I told my sons, like, you find what you look for. And I think that in his life, I've found what I looked for. And when I was able to sort of stay the course and
Mm-hmm.
recognize that the work was in the looking, the work was in the scribing, the work wasn't in the success, things have borne out for me to be true. You know, even saying I wanted to get my gun rates back, it wasn't a guarantee. And I mean, you know, I called you. He was like, dude, just because you got a law degree don't mean that man, look, you out here robbing people. I don't know who you are, right? It is interesting because, you know, like everybody responds differently. And what I appreciated about you is like, you know, you treated me with the respect and the dignity of saying your resume don't make you somebody I trust.
Mm-hmm.
Like we still got to have a conversation because I'm standing on my name, I'm standing on my word, I'm standing on my reputation, and it is actually a commitment to teach somebody how to wield a dangerous and a violent weapon. You know, and one of the things, and I had worked with other folks before, and they were all cool. I mean, and they were all skilled. But the reason why I wanted to find another teacher, it was because whenever you're trying to learn something, multiple teachers teach you multiple things. And I remember I was like, yo, I'm nice now. And I touched the gun by accident. He was like, yo, don't touch my gun. I was like, yo, we in the booth. She was like, nope, first let me see your fundamentals. She was like, you were like, let me see your fundamentals. She was like, nope, your stance is off. You know what I mean? And what was cool is it quickly recentered me and reminded me that one of the joys that I get out of shooting is the level of concentration it takes to do it right is really predicated on doing the same thing over and over again. But the really subtle thing that you had hit me to was like where I place the tip of my finger at on the trigger. And nobody had told me that before. So I was putting my finger in a place where I wasn't able to control the pressure. And so often the bullet was ejecting from the pistol in a time that wasn't of my choosing, and therefore I wasn't able to control the location of the joint, right? And so part of the essay I'm writing is both about the technical things about shooting, about what it means to pay attention to shooting, but about the ability to distance myself from the violence that got me banned from a gun is what I needed to do to sort of become more acutely aware of what it means to handle a gun safely and handle a gun well.
I'm so glad that you actually internalized that because I always approach each student differently in the sense that, it's the same approach, but the outcome is different. I feel like, I have a student that might not know anything. So they're all ears. They're all like, okay, I'm going to listen to every single thing they say, anything she says. But then I have students that, came in there like you. Look, I did this before. I got this. Boom, boom, boom. I got this. I mean, even training my own dads was the same approach. One of my dads in the military. He
Yeah, I know he don't
did the
listen.
same
I know
approach.
straight up, I know he don't listen at all, yo.
He did. He did nice. They both were excellent students. They both definitely are excellent students. It took a
After
while
7 minutes,
though.
though, that's what I'm about to say. Like after
Yes.
7 minutes, yo, it is funny too, man, because like that's the thing. Look, and I don't know the biggest thing I was afraid of for real in picking a gun, and people are like, well, why would you want to shoot a gun anyway? And the
Hmm.
biggest thing I was afraid of is can you one detach? Could I detach myself? The legacy of pistols in my life is hip hop, Boys in the Hood, and Menace to Society. You know, the other thing
Same.
about the messaging that we receive is that guns are a vehicle for destruction. And guns are
Hmm.
still a vehicle for violence, but it's not just that, man. I met older white couples who shooting, 22 rifles as sport. And it was a way for them to reconnect with each other. I had a white dude that was beside me, man, that he in the joint licking off rounds. His cluster is just like straight marksman. And after I was like, yo, dude, where you work? He was like, no, man, dude, I'm a substitute teacher. What? He was like, yo, I'm gonna tell you what you need to do. He's like, you just need to dry fire every night. You know, it was
Yeah.
amazing. It was characters that you meet. And I think that it is a sport, actually. This is one of these weird things where
Yes.
as somebody who grew up post incarceration in a lot of progressive spaces that say things that, we need to find all of the ways to ban guns. Um, in the spaces that I went where people were legally holding firearms, I felt it made me realize that there wasn't a conversation being had about the reasons why people shoot and the reasons
Mhm.
why people shoot legally. And
Yeah.
also, you know, once you pick up a gun, I mean, it is so hard, man. I was like, dude, I'm not shooting at nobody. I I get lucky every time I hit the square. You know what I mean? Like it's a humility that comes with going out of the range that you recognize that people forget about when they had the conversation about how we should think about guns in society.
Mhm. I hear you on that. So before I answer that question or get him to answer that question, Mike, I do want to ask Dwayne one thing though. When you I remember you had this look on your face, like when we left out the range, kind of like before you came in there and after. It was the same look, like I'm so grateful that y'all gave me a chance. You was just going around just saying thank you. Like you was just so relieved that it was a possibility for you to do this thing. Like, can you express to me what you was kind of feeling at that moment? How did you feel? Because I
It's
mean,
well, it's wild because it's in some ways counterintuitive. You know, like I said, I had a full tuition academic scholarship to Howard University, and I got it snatched from me.
mm-hmm,
And I got it snatched because I had a criminal conviction. And I've had, I've had jobs that were taken from me at progressive organizations because I had a criminal conviction. And I'm not
mm-hmm.
supposed to talk about it. It's like sort of airing dirty laundry. And I've
Yeah.
also had a lot of occasions where I've said that to people about what happened. It was like, Dwayne, you just complaining. And I get it because some of the notion that I'm complaining comes from the fact that I got a Yale Law degree, that I got a degree from the University of Maryland, that I've gotten a lot of fellowships from different spots all over the country, that I've literally got a chance to travel the world with words, that I've gotten people that I know who were doing life in prison out of prison. I have been abundantly blessed, and a lot of people imagine that my blessings
Came easy.
should demand of me that I don't ever articulate a grievance. Not
Mm,
even that it came easy, but that it should demand of me that I never articulate a grievance. But the
mm,
truth is, it hurts when your people reject you.
right.
And so I was like, man, these motherfuckers, excuse me. I was like, yo, these people are not about to let me shoot no guns, yo. And even after, man, when I went to the first range, I had my confession with me.
Yes.
I had my sentencing order with me, and I had my gun license with me, my gun permit. These
Mm-hmm.
people didn't need to see none of that.
No,
It
you
was
was
like
at
a
triple
level of
defense,
trust.
baby. You were good.
But no, but even before I was with you though, even I'm at the
Mhm.
NRA range, yo. I'm at the
Oh, okay,
NRA
okay.
range, and the
Uh-huh.
dude was like, "No, we good." And he's like, "Yo,"
Mm-hmm.
he was like, "If you breaking the law, we gonna get you. Don't even worry about it."
Yeah.
But the point is that I had my paperwork as if they were freedom papers, and
Mm-hmm.
time again, the people at the range were like, "Nah, we good, bro. You ain't got to show us all that." Like,
Yeah.
and it wasn't just a simple "we trust you." It was a "this is not the place to get out of pocket," and we know that this ain't the place for you to get out of pocket. But also, we
Mm-hmm.
know that anybody with good sense, and you sound like you got good sense, and actually, we could look you up. We don't need you to tell us something. We could look you up. And so, like, I think the gratefulness came from, more than, and I don't want to overstate the case, but in some ways, given the gravity of picking up a pistol, given that it is also a machine of death, the trust and all of these spots that I was given. And I was telling everybody I had felonies. It was like, yo, why does he keep telling us that? I was telling everybody. And so in part, the gratefulness was that um, by the time, by my fifth time at the range, I could stop saying it.
Mm-hmm.
I was
Yeah.
just a weird dude at the range that wanted the geometrical shapes. You know what I mean? You know how you pick out your target joint, and
Mm-hmm.
it's always like the zombies is gone and all of this sort of other, and it's a huge stack. I'm the one that get that huge stack that has just the like triangles and shit, right? I was that dude, and they like, yo, I don't know why he got those triangles, but I was. And also, I got a video, man. I got a video one time when this other guy that I was working with named Carl at Shooters, right?
Mm-hmm.
Man, I was with my girlfriend too, man, and I was like, bullseye, bullseye, bullseye. He was like, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. And it was like this feeling of pride that he had in me
Yes.
learning the thing well. And I think
Mm-hmm.
that's what the gratitude was for. Recognizing that it was a moment where everybody's response to me said that at least for them, and at least in that moment, I had literally eclipsed the violence of my past. You know,
Nice.
that I wasn't being connected to it.
That's good. I'm really happy that you had that experience, honestly, because you got to be delivered from your past in many ways, and in order for you to move forward. So I really appreciate you sharing that with us. To answer Michael's question, so what steps? The first step you should go through as far as trying to get your gun rights back. I know you've
Um,
mentioned some things before. Can you just kind of put that out there
yeah. So
again, real quick, in steps?
the first steps is the thing about your state of conviction, and it's just the research state law. It really is. It's a state and a federal question, but the state law governs. If you get your rights back in that state, then the federal law gives you your rights back. And it's a long history about why that's the case, but that is the case. And so, like, if you're locked up in Montana, you could get your gun rights back. If you were locked up in Virginia, you could get your gun rights back. If you were locked up in Connecticut, you would need to get a pardon. So you just want to look at what that. And if you have a federal conviction, you need to get a pardon as well. But like, I had a state conviction, so it's nothing that the federal law could do for my state conviction. And you got to remember, my conviction is in the state of Virginia. That means that Connecticut, where I live, can't do anything about my conviction.
Mhm.
The state where you got your arrest is the only state that could do something about that conviction. And so you just research state law and then you go from there. The easiest way to do it, honestly, though, is and you could just Google, can I get my gun rates back? Literally, if it was me, I would just Google, can I get my gun rates back if I have a felony conviction in this state? And then that would be your first answer. And really, no matter where you are, if you get a pardon, you could get your gun rates back. But I would start with that basic Googling,
Mhm.
and then I would reach out to a lawyer. No matter what it says, I would reach out to a lawyer because they would give you a good sense of next steps.
Okay, okay. All right. So, or we just hire you, Michael said.
Yo, and look, man, I, I woke up at 3 o'clock this morning and I biked 20 miles, and then I took my son to work, and then I went to work, and I've been in meetings from like 10 o'clock until 4 o'clock. And one of the things I realized is the beautiful thing about it being some number of billion people on this planet is you could find somebody to do the work, and we all could figure out how we could admit what we can't do.
Hmm.
And as a lawyer, I really appreciate the lawyer that represented me because I know that it's only a fool who represents himself. And anybody who's looking for a lawyer, you want a person. Think about getting a lawyer in the same way you would get a surgeon that's going to do LASIK on you. You don't want somebody that never did the thing. And I didn't represent myself when I got my gun race back. I wrote my initial my original petition, but I got a lawyer who revised it, who took out some of the arrogance that I had in my own petition, who streamlined it, and then who had a reputation with the court and was able to present it to the court and present himself as a representative for me, which likely went some degree of the way towards making sure that I was viewed as somebody with respect when I went into the court. And so that's what
Hmm.
you want. You want somebody that's in your state, that's in your jurisdiction, that's one of the players. But frankly, this is a serious issue and it's not easy. And it is sometimes happenstance. If I had been locked up in Maryland,
Uh-oh. Wi-Fi messed up again. If you can hear me, Dwayne.
I can, it's just
Oh,
crazy.
there it is. It's good now.
Cool.
Yeah. You said if you were in Maryland, then what?
If I was in Maryland, I probably couldn't get my gun rates back, not as easily as I was able to get them back because I was in Virginia. And I
Hmm.
should just say, man, I appreciate everybody that's listening. I think that one of the hardest parts about being anybody in this world is that it's hard to find somebody to listen to you when you do something positive. When you
Hmm.
do something negative, it's much easier to find a voice. And so I'm glad that you got this following, and I'm glad that I got to tell these pieces of the story because getting my gun rates back was a long journey that that came after I spent a lot of time grappling with violence. That after I spent a lot of time writing about my own violence, about the violence of people who I care about. After I spent a long time trying to get people out of prison who have committed serious act of violence, right? My desire to get my gun rates back came at the end of all of that. And so being able to have an audience of folks to tell that to is really a beautiful thing. And I appreciate your time, and I appreciate everybody who's listening and watching their time as well.
Yeah, much appreciated as well. Same here. Now, before you go, I do got a little rapid fire questions to ask you, okay?
Bet.
So just want to shoot some questions and on top of your dome, just give me the answer the quick as you can. All right. So you got two sons, right? So I'm just thinking about, them growing up, seeing you and things like that. what's the one thing you want them to take with them? When that day come past, when y'all got to split part ways, somebody passed, and you gone. What's that thing you want them to keep in their head about their dad?
Yo, man, they watched that father. I want them to remember that they watched me um, be stoic for a huge part of their life, and they watched me learn how to weep, and they watched me be strong enough and vulnerable enough to weep in public, and they know that I ain't never fucking felt to show up for nobody I care about.
Nice, nice. All right. So a gun question. All right. So I know you're into guns and stuff. All right. So what gun do you have your eyes on right now?
I still love a Glock, yo. I think I was just rock with a Glock 19.
Okay, okay. Glock 19. You're a Glock man. I told you I don't mess with no Glocks. Y'all good. Y'all can keep that. I'm a SIG girl all the way. Love my SIGs. Love my SIGs. I just realized I put pieces together and I told Dee this is what I need to get right here. It's like a whole collection. So SIG Sauer makes the P365. It's a
Yeah.
handgun. It's compact size, nice to carry. They got, the macro, they got the XL. But they got this one that's a rose. So it's all black with rose gold trimmings, and it has a emblem of a rose on the handle as well. I didn't realize until I had a student to come to the range with me the other day. She had an AR-15 that was designed the same way. I was like, I need it. I
It,
was like,
I
I
ain't even
need
gonna front. Like the thing that blew my mind about guns though was the way it fits in your hand has a lot to do with the comfortability of your
it.
ability to shoot it, right? And so you on a whole nother level. You thinking about designs and things like that. I'm still
Yeah.
thinking about how my mind was blown by recognizing that like I need the barrel to go past the bottom of my hand to have a
Mm-hmm.
real comfortable grip. If it
Yeah.
feels like my hand is swallowing the gun, I just
Mm-hmm.
can't shoot it effectively. And so I'm still stuck on this notion um that I'm trying to figure out what gun like fits me the right way that I feel comfortable picking it up and I don't feel like it's like yeah.
I got you. Come back. Come back. I got you. We're gonna go. We're gonna have a fun time. Bring the kids. We're gonna have a fun time. Let's check it out. We're gonna shoot a couple of guns and figure it out. For me, the reason why I don't like the Glock is because of how it fits in my hand. Well, that's one reason.
Yeah,
Yeah. Under my middle knuckle, it rubs a little bit. And I don't like the way that feels. It doesn't fit real good in my hand. So yeah, it's a matter of you, like you said, testing out different ones to see which ones you like, what works good for you. And SIG do get you with the colors. Oh my gosh, they got some beautiful guns. But Glock do too, y'all. Glock got everything out there. I mean, you can pimp that gun out real quick. Like you just make it just how you want it, regardless of what you got.
yeah,
But it's
all
one of
black
those things.
everything.
All black everything. I hear you. I hear you. That's I always recommend that for your first starter gun. For anybody, get all black just because you never know if
You
you
see
wear a
how
white
she just
shirt.
said I had a starter gun? She was like, yeah, your starter gun, yeah, it should be all black. But once you get sophisticated, she was like, I see you got rings on and shit. How you gonna say you want all black everything and you got like 8 rings on your hand?
I mean, I hear you though. I hear you. It's one of those things where when you buy one, then you can't help but buy another. I mean, can
Yeah, I
anybody
know.
else attest to that? You're gonna buy multiple guns at some point. That's pretty much the way that goes. But I really appreciate you so much for coming on. And anybody here, if you have enjoyed this content today, please make sure you hit that subscribe button and don't forget to press the notification button. I'm going to continue this journey on Father's Day month because we're celebrating fathers the whole month here at Shoot the Shush. And I want you guys to be inspired as dads out there. I have plenty of viewers that's dads. And I love the fact that you guys support, even though it's a woman empowerment channel. I like to try to give you guys content out there that's for everybody, but coming from a woman, that's the only view I can give you. And you guys teach me every day, just like I'm teaching you guys. So I appreciate you guys taking the time to spend your evening with us. And, I really hope that you guys leave with some information that you learned today. And definitely give a thumbs up to this video as well so others can see it's worthwhile even looking at. But Mr. Dwayne, do you got some final words to empower our viewers with?
Yeah, I got a newsletter. It's called Random Acts of Poetry, and I just read poems to people in the street. And each when an issue comes out, it's just like a 2 minute poem. But you
Hmm.
should check it out. And one the last joint I wrote, speaking of fathers, my homeboy Randall Horton, his father died,
Hmm.
Clarence Edward Horton, and his dad was 92. But
That's a
One of
blessing.
the things yeah, one thing I recognize, he grew up in Alabama, grew up in the South, and one of the things that I think fathers is important, and his brother was a pillar of the community. And when I heard Randall eulogize him, he ended the eulogy with, help someone. And one
Yeah.
of the things I find beautiful about being on this joint and having 800 people listening is you can feel the vibe in the comments, and you can just feel the energy, and you can feel the energy from you. I know a lot of your work is about empowering women. It's about empowering people to know how to use guns safely. And so I appreciate that. Like, you helped me, and I know you helping other folks. And I do think that this is part of the legacy that we're all building and that we're all creating. So yeah, I just want to give a shout out to my homie and to his father, because ultimately it's both about who we want to be as fathers, but it's about the people who are emblematic and representative of who we want to be. And my
Yeah.
homie's dad is one of those models that I have. And so I want to give him a shout out and just thank you guys for giving me time to speak my truth.
Definitely. And I definitely second that, actually reaching out to help others. Even in my last live last week, that was one of the things I talked about. I shared my personal testimony of how I, heart beating like crazy, encountered a group of teenagers to correct some behavior I thought needed to be talked about. And so it's a challenge thing to do here. We're scared to approach these young kids out here to talk to them about stuff out of fear that they might retaliate, in any kind of way. And I understand that. But at some point, as the adults that's living today, we have to help change the perspective of these young kids. So we have to give back in that way. Outside of your own home, yeah. Mentor some of these kids in your neighborhood. Even if it is just
Yeah,
to tell them good morning every day. Give them eye
yeah,
contact and say good morning. I mean, my kids stand at the bus stop with kids that's their neighbors every day. And guess what? They never look up to say hi. They don't even know their name. I
yeah.
mean, just simple little things. So, but yeah, definitely I appreciate everybody. Y'all have a good awesome night, and I have more continued content coming next week. Me and Dee are working on something to share with you guys. And thanks, Dee, for being in the comments. Hey, baby. So he says he's proud of you, brother. Your story has helped many, and I definitely second that. That's my husband right there, and he's right. Definitely right. That's why I wanted to share your story with everybody. You have a good night and enjoy hanging out with your kids. Everybody, see y'all next week.